when it comes to intuition, why this is such an important subject for me in particular, and the clients that I work with now, this comes up a lot. We're faced with big decisions in our lives, moments in our lives where we have multiple options. We're perhaps going from one chapter in our life into another one. And this is often where people get stuck. And I can relate to this as well. In the past, there's a multiple options available to us. And if we go to the mind to work out which path is best for us, we can get stuck in a loop, because the mind will, go through those different options. It will go through the different pros and cons of different options. And really, it can't decipher which route is best for us, because there's always learning and growth, whichever path we go down. So there's no wrong option in terms of which path we take in life. But there is another level of intelligence which we all have access to, which we kind of lose as we go through our lives. And we can talk a bit more about why we lose access to it. That I think is the voice of the soul, is what I call, or the higher self, which doesn't communicate via our thoughts, via our conditioned mind, but comes through more as a felt sense. And through the work that myself and Kirsi do with people, we can start to develop and enhance that connection to the felt sense, which, as I say, is how I consider the intuition to communicate with us. But yes, and as I say, I speak to a lot of people who have completely lost touch with that felt sense, and as a result, I've lost touch with the intuitive mind, you could say, or the intuition, which we all have access to. But I thought we'd start off talking a bit about why it is that we lose touch with that. Because, when we're born, we have access to the felt sense, we have access to intuition, but we lose it as we go through life. So, yeah, first of all, welcome, Kirsi. Great to have you back. And what for you then? Why is it that you think we can lose touch with that intuition as we go through our lives when we're born with access to it?
Oh, that's a great question. And Mark, thank you for inviting me. So, why do we lose intuition in the first place? So, there is a lot of conditioning around our upbringing. There is a lot of expectations that start coming from our parents so that we can function in the world. And so our mind is geared into the rhythm of physical life, the demands of the physical existence. And a lot of times when parents have lost touch with themselves and they're not giving so much space to just be and function from that restful place, we attach that same to our children, and so we rush them. For example, just a few days ago I had my grandchildren in my house, and intuition is, I believe, it's cultivated. So that's why we lose it, because the parents do not cultivate it.
Yeah.
So, for example, Lyric, this little 2-3-year-old, she was just so into playing with her Legos. Like, I could tell that her whole presence was geared in that. She didn't hear nothing, she didn't see nothing. She was so into it and experimenting. And then we decided it was time to go. So we interrupted this very almost sacred existence in that moment that she had. And she was clearly upset about that. So that's not what hinders intuition, but when we do it over and over and over again, we condition the child to actually pay more attention to the outer world than to that inner world.
Right.
That's just one example that I could.
Yes. Yeah, interesting. Because it does all go back to those early years, doesn't it? And as you said, it is like we do template our caregivers essentially, don't we? So for me, it's a case, this has happened over generations and generations, isn't it? It's now I'd say it's more in the Western world. I wouldn't say it's the case for humanity as a whole, really. I think there are communities, certainly that I've experienced in, for example, Peru, whereby it seems like there is more time for being rather than doing. But certainly in the Western world, we're programmed in this very masculine dominated society, aren't we? Where it's like doing, achieving, competing. And so we get very locked into, if we're doing the whole time, we get locked into the mind. The mind has basically taken over our entire consciousness. And people that are very intellectually intelligent are lauded as being the kind of peak of our society, you know. And so everybody is locked into the minds to the point where, and this is starting to change now, whereby everybody is kind of lost in the mind to the extent that they actually believe they are the mind, which is where humanity has been for who can say, you know, hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, if you go back far enough. So we've got completely lost in the mind to the point where we've forgotten who we are completely. Now, the issue with that is that I think the mind is very good for certain things. It's very good for the day-to-day aspects of human life. Essentially, it's focused on survival and safety. And if we're making decisions from the mind, then we can create lives that are very safe, but not necessarily particularly fulfilling. And that's where I think that humanity has got to, particularly in the West. If I look back at my life, you know, to the point where I started kind of waking up in my mid-30s, that's what I'd created, really. I'd created a life from mind that was very safe. I had a stable job. I was a happy relationship. But all of the kind of, particularly from a work aspect, I would say, the kind of joy had gone out of life completely. I was kind of just going through the motions in my work. I knew that I wasn't fulfilled. I knew that I wanted to serve others, but I'd made a series of decisions from mind up to that point based on survival and safety. So it was always like, oh, I need to, well, I could, for example, take that path towards being an artist, but there's probably no money there. Even though I'm passionate about that, there's probably no money there, for example. And so I started creating a life for myself based on, money, based, an income purely to survival and safety around money. This took me down a route where my career was in advertising and design. And I was just making decisions on what was going to pay me best, basically, and create a comfortable life for me. And all of the, decisions that could have taken me towards a life of more fulfillment and passion, the mind isn't interested in that. It's interested in survival and safety. And so that's exactly what I created, a life that wasn't very passionate or fulfilled, but that was quite comfortable financially for me. And, that's the point where I started waking up and realizing, okay, this is not what I want from life. I want something more. And I've lost my connection completely to, you could say, my higher self, which I didn't really know about higher self at that point. But certainly I felt like I wasn't living a life that was truly aligned for me. And that's where I started to, heal myself and wake up at that point. But that, it seems to me, is where a lot of people, we get to in our lives, whether it's in work or whether it's in our relationships. Maybe there's a choice there to go with somebody who really lights us up and we think would make us happy or fulfilled. But, we've made a decision at another point where, not to take that chance. And perhaps we have had our hearts broken in the past and we don't take that chance towards our true, of what our heart is telling us to do. But how does that resonate for you, Kirsi? Is that kind of what you feel as well, in terms of how we lose that connection to our higher self and our intuition?
Absolutely. So what rings true to me and what you're saying strong is that seeking for safety, and from that linear mind. So there's the control, there's the attachments, there is the I know syndrome. If I just know everything, then I'm really safe. And this is how mind functions. And when we grow, whatever we put our energy to, it grows. So
Yeah.
then we grow into this world we have manifested through the mind, and we find ourselves at one point or another, we run into the crash. Maybe it is the sickness, or maybe it's
Yes.
we get laid off, or divorce, or so the pain. And that's what then gets us off track of mind, and that
Mm.
can become the blessing for us to actually start finding that intuition, when we realize on a level that is more deeper than all of this that I have built actually is not working for me. It's working against me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened to me. It was like, it happens to a lot of people, I think, where there is a complete, breakdown of some kind, where can no longer go on living from mind, because it's just the world you've created, and how you feel in that world is just so broken that something has to collapse at some point. And as you said, there is when you look back, you can be thankful for that, even though it might be incredibly difficult what you go through. For me, it was years of mental health challenges. Some people have breakdowns. Some people, maybe it's a physical issue that manifests some kind of illness, but something that happens that just means that you can no longer go down that path of just going through the motions in life. And as you said, living from the conditioned mind. And and so you have to find a new way of living. And this is where we get to. And a lot for many people that I sit with, and I'm sure it's the case for you as well, Kirsi, whereby if you've lived decades and decades just living in the head and just thinking your way through life, we can lose touch completely with the body. Like we
Yes.
literally just become mind. And so for a lot of people, myself included, and our mentors as well, I talked around this, which is that you can no longer feel what's happening within the body. So as I said earlier, intuition really is, people talk around, a gut feeling, or, what your heart says. We're essentially talking around making decisions from how they feel, rather than, entering into the debate in the mind. But for so many of us, as I said, if we live in our heads our whole life, there is no sensation in the body. And so initially there is a lot of work to do to feel through that kind of numbness in the body, to reconnect with, for example, what the heart is saying or what the gut is saying, which is incredibly challenging. Because initially it's, I can't feel anything in the body. And for a lot of people, I think that's very disconcerting and very off-putting. And, and this is where having support is really important, to have people with you who can sit with you with the numbness, for example, so that you can start to reconnect with what's happening in the body. I would say almost impossible to do on your own. You just need somebody else to template, to start, getting the felt sense online again.
Mm. Yes, absolutely. I agree 100%. So it's actually, there is this we're scared, because it's like a paradigm shift. It's coming from a whole different construction to another. And we're forced to do that when we come into the crisis. However, it is scary, and sometimes we realize without crisis that, hey, we just that in instinct starts speaking to us, which is a little bit different than intuition, but instinct leads us to intuition, oftentimes. So it starts speaking to us that, hey, there's something deeper. How that feeling, that, there's something more that I'm just not experiencing. So the curiosity of that instinct is then can lead us into developing the intuition, and leads us subtly back to our body. But like you said, because there is a shift that happens from one existence kind of to another. We from the known to the unknown, the support, that we can get from each other is hugely beneficial and just speeds up that process. Which I tried to, like, even though my intuition was pretty strongly working, but I still felt so disconnected because I wasn't fully experiencing my body, because I didn't have safety in my
Right.
body. And then when I learned the work that we do, the somatic, body-based, felt sense work that we do, and our community, that's when the safety started coming into the body, and that opens up. Because really, if I may kind of shift into, what really works with intuition is courage.
Yes.
So when we start feeling that safety, we start being more courageous. And, it's still over and over again, we jump into the unknown one way or the other, maybe subtly, maybe, in our decisions. And every time we do, it actually develops our intuition when we follow that thread of that subtle sense, or the subtle, it's more like a sense, when you say a voice, people go like, oh, I don't hear any voice.
Well, the voice most people hear is the thought, is the mind, isn't it? Which is so overpowering and loud. But there's like a very quiet voice, or a
Yes.
silent voice, you could say, even, which is in the background there saying, do this. But the mind is so loud. And as you say, if there's no safety in the system, then that's what makes the mind very, very loud. If we don't feel safe in our own system, then the mind is going to be loud, incredibly loud. But when we're able to find, well-being and safety and ground in our system, the mind then isn't quite as loud and controlling. It's still always going to be there. But if we've cultivated that safety within through the healing work, for example, that we practice, then you're more likely to be able to, number one, hear that voice of the intuition and then follow it through when the mind kicks up a fuss and says, no, don't do that, because and it will throw every fearful scenario it can at you to keep you where you are, and not so that you don't potentially the mind has got no interest really in things like fulfillment and well-being and happiness. What it's interested in is keeping you where you are, keeping you small because you're alive and you're surviving. And that's, it doesn't want to take any unnecessary threats to that. So it will throw everything it can at you to keep you small, to keep you as you are. Whereas what your intuition wants, or your higher self, is for you to expand. It wants you to grow. It wants you to heal. But then the mind will come in and say, well, don't do that because, think about the money. Think about the, can you really afford to take that time off work? Can you really afford to invest this money? Can you really afford to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? What if it goes wrong? What if it doesn't work? So it'll throw everything it can at you in terms of fear, for you not to expand, for you not to grow, for you not to understand who you are, because that it sees as unnecessary threats to your survival. So I don't think it matters where you are on the path. There's always going to be that conditioned mind is always going to be there, because it's important for our survival in human form. But as you rightly said, if you can cultivate well-being, safety, and ground within, it makes it easier to then follow through with the intuition once you get in contact with it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it brings me to what I actually talk about in my book a lot, or is kind of the foundation, is that the mind and, intuition, the loud mind and the quiet mind, they're kind of together. They find that harmony, they find that dance.
Yeah.
It's like the yin and the yang, it's the male and the female.
Yes.
And like you rightfully said, we're not dissing the mind. We're not saying,
Yeah.
okay, we don't need the mind, we don't want the mind.
Yeah.
Mind is very important for us to be grounded.
Essential.
For
Yeah.
yes, it's essential for our survival. This is the dance of the spiritual and the physical. This is the dance of the heaven and the earth. So those, and that's where the challenge is, for us to find that balance and to be able to do the dance. So mind is working, it gives us the framework. It gives a child an understanding of this world. Like, the child needs to stop playing with the Legos. She can't just stay in that world of intuition and creativity and the flow, because she's also learning the analytical part of the world, putting it all
Balance is
together.
key, isn't it? Yes.
Pardon? Yes, balance. Balance is the key. Yeah. And really, in that balance, there's a whole new flow. It's like the surfer, surfing that wave. And it's that golden thread. And yeah, and it's a beautiful thing when you start finding that groundedness in the flow of life.
Yes. Yeah, it just reminds me, I mean, I went down the path initially with Buddhism, and I thought, and I hear this a lot from people now, where it's like, as you said, dissing the ego. It's like almost we've lived our lives from mind and ego. And so we somehow think, when we start on this journey of awakening, the idea is to destroy the ego, to quiet the thinking mind, which of course ultimately is like more ego, really. It's like the spiritual ego coming online. And so, but if we're fighting against something, if we're pushing something away, we're making it stronger. It's it's a fruitless task, really. There's no way of winning that war. That's, as you said there, the goal is not to like destroy the ego. What I say to people is it's more like getting the ego out of the driving seat and putting it in the passenger seat, and having the real you in the driving seat. You could say the intuition or the higher self. We don't want to completely kick the ego out of the car. You can't do that anyway. But the ego is really, really important for the day-to-day activities of human life. I went to I know you've been over to Colombia, Kirsi. You may have experienced this yourself, but I worked with plant medicines a few weeks ago, and I had the second ceremony I went to. My ego was completely dissolved. My sense of self dissolved completely, which is an amazing state to be in. It's also incredibly challenging when you're feel like you completely dissolved as a separate being. I think there's benefit to experiencing those kind of states, definitely, but you cannot function in 3 or 4D reality without the ego, without the sense of self. The aim is not to get rid of the sense of self. You wouldn't be able to function in human form without the sense of self. And I'm always very grateful and happy when my sense of self and the ego comes back online, because to experience no ego and to be completely dissolved into all that is actually quite a shocking experience, really, and it's quite an overwhelming experience. When the self starts condensing again into separateness, there's actually a sense of relief for me. It's like, oh, I can think again. I can walk. I can navigate this reality. So the goal is not to completely dissolve ego and the that conditioned mind. It's to have it in the, like I said, in the passenger seat, so that you can consult it when you want. As the Buddhists say, it's like it's a beautiful servant but a terrible master. If you see it as a tool that you can pick up and use and can help you navigate human life, brilliant. But it's when it becomes the master, in other words, you get lost in it and you believe you are it, that's when the problems start, because then it's going to take you to a life that isn't particularly fulfilling or passionate. It's going to take you to a life of survival and safety, which is we're capable of so much more once we start connecting with who we truly are.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
And I
what?
believe, when you
Yeah.
were, if I may, when you were speaking, I was just picking up this our the value in experiencing contrast, and how the
Mm,
humanity has gone so far on a scale of that linear thinking, and
mm.
now we're seeking for the plant medicine, to give us that contrast so we
Balances.
can
Yeah.
start coming back to that balance. So it's really
Yes.
a seeking for that balance.
Yes. And you don't have to use plant medicine. Plant medicine, as I
Oh,
see it, is like
absolutely not.
it's not for everybody. It really is. I would describe it as like pushing accelerator pedal on your spiritual development. It's very powerful, and if you're not called to it, then as we talked around before in his lives, it's really not a recommended path. But the work that we do, that's why I love it, because I feel it can benefit everybody. It might be a kind of slower, gradual path of evolution, but I think it's also works incredibly well in combination with, for example, psychedelics or plant medicine, because it's very grounding. We're sitting with others, ideally on a daily basis, um, feeling into our bodies, templating other systems. When we do that, my experience, what happens eventually is that the mind starts to quieten down, the heart chakra begins to open because we're connected with another, and slowly, if we commit to it, if we're patient, like with anything, it's like learning a new language. Basically, we start connecting with the heart, the felt sense, over the head, and that's what brings that balance back into the system. Whereas if we've just been living from a doing or conditioned mind consciousness. But yes, I mean, what I thought I'd go over is just one exercise that I do often with people to start to now tap into, give you a kind of direct experience of how this works. Because, no matter what we talk around here today, when decisions come up, the first thing we go to is the head, because, like I say, it's so loud. But one very simple exercise that people can do if you're watching this now or on the replay to connect with what I would call the intuition or the felt sense, particularly of the heart. If you now bring your awareness, you close your eyes and just bring your awareness to the center of your chest. Now, for some people, this exercise will be very straightforward. For some people, not so much. If you've experienced especially a lot of trauma in your life, then it may well be that there's a lot of layers of numbness to feel through initially before you can get a sense of what the heart is feeling. But by simply saying to yourself something that you know is true, for example, I say, "My name is Mark," and then just feel into the center of your chest. And what I describe happens there when I say "my name is Mark" is there is generally a pleasant feeling coming from the center of the chest there, the heart chakra. Feels like it's filling up. It feels connected. It feels happy, essentially. There's like a light feeling there. If now I say, "My name is John," and I feel into the heart chakra, center of the chest, there's like a collapse that happens. I can feel energy draining away, and I can generally feel like a lower vibration, more unpleasant energy in the center of the chest. And this is a very, very, very simple way of connecting with the way in which a truth feels in our system, the way in which our heart feels when it hears a truth, as compared to something that is not true. And this is essentially the way I make decisions now. Is that if I'm faced with a decision in my life, a possibility, for example, going to Costa Rica in January now to work with the Shipibo, and my head initially came in and went, give me all kinds of concerns about money or what happened to me when I went to Peru last time and how challenging it was. But I did exactly that exercise. I just brought up the idea and the vision of going to Costa Rica in January. And my heart started to fill up. It started to get that feeling that I just described when I said a true statement to myself. So I know that is, for example, my soul or my higher self guiding me towards that experience, saying yes to that experience, because it's going to be beneficial for my healing, my evolution, and my expansion as a consciousness, as a being. Now, if I got a collapse in the center of the chest there when I said that, I know that that is the higher self or the intuition saying, no, that's not going to be beneficial for you. So that's a very simple way that we can start to reconnect with the felt sense. And as I said, I work with people in different, spaces on their journey. And for a lot of people I know, when they do that journey, they don't get any kind of connection there at all with the heart. And it can take months, it can take years to start to get connection again with that felt sense. But yes, how does that resonate with you, Kirsi? Is that something that how do you connect with your intuition, for example, if you are faced with a difficult decision in your life?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. Such an important question. So, yes. So for first of all, it may feel like a nudge, just a thought, a random thought. It could be something very separated from what I'm doing, that I get an instinct. My intuition is speaking to me. And for me to start kind of testing, that is this really the true intuition, or is this my mind, or is this maybe somebody else's energy that I'm tapping into? So I start waiting. So I come into this place of patience. In a way, that's how I test it. So I become unattached. And sometimes it's difficult to become unattached if it is something big, like you're talking about going to Costa Rica, because then your mind starts talking about, well, okay, what about me leaving the home? And then your excitement, well, that's going to be fun, wow, I'm going to get a vacation, or I'm going to do, this, that. So just kind of centering myself into my body and allowing myself to make a decision that, okay, this could be something really important for me and my family. So let me just unattach, let me wait and see if this is my intuition. So I'm going to work first of letting go of those excitements or fears, unattaching myself. And then I make a decision again, like an intention, that this will confirm itself to me. I will have a confirmation, because intuition, well, Einstein said, intuition doesn't come to an unprepared mind.
Right.
And so what that means to me is intuition works through the layers of mind. It works in our linear thinking. And intuition has already prepared my mind for that path where it's guiding me. So from that same place, from that linear thinking, we come back to that balance, to that dance. If I allow the dance to happen and be unattached, it will start showing me that something will come out of that. Maybe somebody will call me and say, Kirsi, I don't know, I had a dream that you're going to Costa Rica. Is that true? Because that has happened, so many times. These things are just, magical. But when we come to that dance, that's when we allow these things to happen. So then I start having a confirmation. I'm being, oh, okay. So this is something that I am going to sit with, I'm going to take seriously. And a lot of times with me, actually I will say this, that when we're talking about big things like going to Costa Rica, or maybe, doing something big.
Relationship. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But it is really important probably to our listeners to also hear that intuition is cultivated with small steps.
Right.
So it's good to start cultivating intuition, and I think intention is a huge part of cultivating intuition. So for example, I think I just came into I know I did, to the crash of my linear mind. This was years ago, decades ago actually, and I was tired of letting that run my life.
Yeah.
And my cry from my soul was, I want to hear guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer came to me just one day. The answer came. I had just woken up and my children were with me, and a thought came to me that, oh, should I go to that church over there? It was just some church I'd never gone to. It was a random thought. But I had just intentionally cried out that I want to start hearing a voice of guidance. I want to start hearing intuition. And so this came, and I remembered my cry. I connected to, I said, well, what if this is it? And should I go or should I not go? And this was the small step for me to cultivate intuition. I decided to follow that instinct, and which became an intuition, because then I went to that church. And this is kind of a, so just, yeah. So I went to the church. The moment I sat down into the pew of that church, I heard a voice, like I heard a loud voice inside of me, now leave. And that taught me so, and I left. That taught me so much. Actually, that was the pivotal point for me to start hearing my inner voice. But I followed it. I allowed the teaching, the cultivation to start happening within myself. And the point of this story is, intuition is something that is nonlinear. It's something that we do not know. We don't understand the workings of it the same way we understand the workings of linear thinking. So there is this trust. There is this little jump that we do into following that voice. But it was not harmful for me to go to that church. It was not, I was not giving up my family. I was not putting any finances to it. It was not putting a risk, so to say, in any kind of way into my life.
Slowly
So,
building up trust.
right. So it was a practice of building that relationship, starting to do that dance. And those small, if we intentionally within ourselves hunger and thirst for intuition, to be alive and guide. Intuition really is the voice of wisdom to me.
Yes.
It yields the gifts that I could not have if I did not have this intuition. It puts me to a life that receives magic. It puts me in front of people who I might never meet without that intuition. So it is something to yearn for. It is something to desire. And when we do desire intuition, it starts responding to us.
Yeah.
And it comes to meet us right where we are. So if you're working as a cashier in a supermarket, it comes to meet you right there. If you are going through a divorce, it comes to me to right there. And it may come to me too in that, well, should I get up now? Or maybe I want to stay and just be before I start working into the linear framework. Maybe I should just be here. So following that intuition in those small steps
Yes.
is hugely, hugely important and beneficial. Yeah.
To build up that trust. Yeah, it's a really good point, that. Yes, because like I said, if you're talking about taking a big jump on a big life decision or a new relationship, for example, as we're talking about, healing retreat in South America or something like that, yeah, to trust the intuition straight away when you haven't built it up is extremely challenging. The mind will come in and it will derail you essentially, because it just doesn't feel safe at all. So you're right, it has to be built up in slow steps. And yes, I think, as you said there, it comes to us in different ways. I think initially it might come, we all know what the gut instinct is, for example. If we start to do this kind of work, healing ourselves, bringing awareness into the body, templating others who've done a lot of this work, it can really help accelerate, I think, the progress in terms of getting that felt sense online, which is how we connect to the higher self, I think. But as you said, it can connect with us in different ways. I think initially that kind of sense of what's happening in the center of the chest there is a nice way to start. But like you're talking around there, it can evolve. No, I think it's really important to bring yourself to a place of stillness and balance and ground. I do this at the end of my meditation when I sit every morning. I'll visualize myself in a place in nature where I feel really safe and supported. And I will then just ask in my mind my guides, teachers, healers, if they have any advice for me for the, at this time of my life, for the day ahead. And I will then drop my awareness to my heart, and I'll get like a stream of consciousness that will come in and give me advice, essentially for things I need to be aware of today, or things I need to focus on in my life. And it's usually very simple. I think this morning it was like, honor what's happening inside, less doing, more being. It's generally, very simple advice like this. But initially, I think it's quite hard to decipher what is the conditioned mind or the ego talking to you, and what is you could say the higher self, the intuition. But I think as you cultivate it more and more, it becomes more and more obvious what is intuition and what is the conditioned mind. And you can kind of go on and you can then essentially hear the conditioned mind as you would do. So you could essentially hear intuition as you do your conditioned mind, because you developed it so much, and it can actually become as loud or louder than the conditioned mind, But I would say to someone new to this, essentially, it's just really important to bring yourself to a place of ground and balance and stillness within. Drop your awareness to your heart and just feel into decisions that are important to you at this time of your life. That's really important, because initially, I think then when you're really tapped in, it can be talking to you the whole time as you're going through the day, but certainly where I am at the moment, I get that stream of consciousness. It just feels like if I get that feeling of the heart chakra opening, a feeling of love and support in my chest, then I know that any words that come in alignment with that is coming from the soul or the higher self, or a much higher vibration. That if I'm tapping into the mind, it's more of a low vibration thoughts that are coming in that are based in fear a lot of the time. But it comes in different ways for different people, I think. And as you cultivate and develop it and focus on your own healing and connecting to the body, it will come in through in whatever way is most aligned to your own system, I feel.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I came up with this tool. It's called MAP, and in our work we talk about mapping, but this is, so MAP is, M is for mindfulness, A is for awareness, and P is for presence. And all of those, the mindfulness brings us to awareness, and awareness brings us to a present moment. And when we practice mindfulness, mindfulness is simply just being aware of what we're doing. So it's kind of the linear, it still has the linear in it. It's the linear aspect of our life. I pick up this cup, I'm aware I'm picking up this cup, I'm aware I'm drinking of this. And then we have the awareness. We become aware of our subtle energies, not just the physical and our thoughts and our emotions, but also the energy behind the action. So then we come into the awareness, which these two together, practice together, brings us to the present moment. And when we start practicing and tapping into the present moment, we start having glimpses of that. That's where, in my life experience, that's where the intuition is. And it becomes such a gift because it guides us. Like, this was now, I don't know how many times I got an intuitive knowing that you were going to call me and invite me to this call. And every time that comes, even though it's come so many times, there's always this voice, nah, you just thinking, you just dreaming, you just had a random thought. However, then that call comes, then your message comes, and it comes the next day or the day after that. And so it prepares, it's already like preparing me in that subtle energy. It starts guiding my subtle energy into what you are meeting me with that linear question, with that decision. And then so it's a beautiful, beautiful gift. And we all have it. We all have it. No person has a bigger gift than the other one. It's all about cultivating it. It's all about.
We're all born with it. All born fully tapped in. And through the series of conditioning and traumas that we experience through life, we lose touch with it, but we can get back in touch with it at any time, and for certain people, I think there's more work to do than others, but it's always there, just waiting for us to have that. And what you said earlier was interesting, that desire to, to put down the thinking mind and start to reconnect with it again. I think there has to be a desire within that comes at different times to different people. It's like the desire for, I described this with soul mission or higher purpose. If we have that real desire within, it's like life starts helping us and guiding us towards that. I discovered on my own journey. Same with intuition. If you have a desire to, like, okay, I really feel like I'm done with just consulting my conditioned mind throughout my life. I know where that's taken me. I want another intelligence to come through. Then life starts helping us out and bringing us towards the people and the practices that can help us to do that as well. Beautiful. And one other thing I wanted to mention is really important now. I think for example, I used the Costa Rica example because this is quite a recent one for me. Made the decision with my heart, even though there was a lot of fear in my mind. My heart kept expanding as I checked in. I knew this was the right path for me. But there's times when we perhaps, fear comes in again, and the mind starts coming in like, oh, you shouldn't do it, you should cancel it, whatever, like this. This happens from time to time. At any time when I know that I'm in a low vibration like fear, I don't take any actions or decisions from that energy. If you take actions and decisions from fear, you'll create a life that just reflects that back to you. So you'll create quite a sort of low vibration reality. The thing to do when you're in fear and you're in doubt and confusion is to focus on the inner work, like go inside and feel through what's happening in the system. Yes, like that phrase, inaction is the action at those times. When we're in low vibration, just want to focus on the inner work, not taking action, not making the big decisions from that energy. When that energy naturally changes, as all energy is in motion, as we know, and you're experiencing more of a high vibration state, like for example, my golden hours are like between 10 and 2. That's why I like to do these lives between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. This is when I take action. This is when I do my work. This is when I make big decisions, because I know that my energy is much more aligned and a higher vibration. I'm going to make decisions and take actions that lead me towards a life that reflects that higher vibration reality. So that's a very simple way of ensuring that you can maintain your alignment with your intuition. When you know you're a bit in fear, when you know you're in low vibration, go inside, feel through it. When you feel like you're in a higher vibration, then check in with your intuition. That's the time to take the actions to create an aligned reality, aligned actions, we call it. Very simple technique to maintain your alignment throughout life, because life's always going to come in and test us at different points.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I thought we'd just bring up a couple of points before we finish. I know you're kind of got a full day ahead of you there, Kirsi, but just bring a couple here that I wanted to talk around before we finish. Someone saying here, Facebook user, I couldn't see who made this question, but great questions coming in. Thanks so much, guys. I've always been tuned into my intuition, but lost it a bit over the last 5 years. Had a med condition that hugely affected my hormones. Under control now. My intuition has been awakened again hugely in the last few months. So yeah, I think I just wanted to point that out. It can happen that things come up in life and we feel like we lose that intuition, particularly if we go through a really difficult time in life. It feels like, if we're going through a lot of fear or an illness, something like that, I think it can feel like we're losing touch with it a bit. But what's your thoughts on that, Kirsi?
Yes, so I feel you, listener. So life is an interesting journey, and it does take us to these places of contrast where at times we seem to lose something precious that we've had. And in this case, intuition. I have gone through the desert of intuition myself. And so there is the beauty in also walking through that valley, because it provides contrast. So when you do come out of that, I believe that then you have even a stronger foundation for your intuition.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's almost like it's a vital part of the journey, isn't it? These sort of highs and lows as we perceive them. And where I describe it to people is like whenever I sit with someone, it's like going for a difficult time. It's a temptation to think, I'm going backwards. I'm going backwards in my healing, but it's not that. It's the way I describe it, it's like an upward spiral from light into dark and then light into dark. And that's just the way human existence is. We're always going from light to dark, but it's an upward trending spiral. So every time we go back into the dark, we've got a different perspective, and we're evolving each time. And we need light and dark experiences to evolve. You can't have light without dark. You have to have the contrast in the both, or there is, you can't appreciate the light unless you've got something to contrast it with. So yes, these difficult experiences are really crucial to our evolution. As you said, they can actually, even if we feel like we're losing intuition, it can actually strengthen it when we come back around again in the spiral.
Right. And I would say also that the story that we create in those times when we come through that valley of darkness, it's very crucial, to have. That's when we need the faith and the hope and that inner knowing that, hey, I'm going to come back. I'm walking towards light each and every moment. Yes. Instead of telling yourself that I did something wrong, or now I'm doomed, or so.
Yes, exactly.
That energy behind that movement.
So important. Yeah, so you don't get lost in it. Like if we're able to feel through the really dark challenges in our life, then we can move through them much easier than if we get locked into the mind again. It start believing the thoughts that tell us that we're never going to get out of it, and we're spiraling downwards, and we're lost, and all is lost. Whereas if we can just get out of the mind, which the mind is just creating suffering and getting us more and more stuck in it like quicksand, if we can get support and feel for what's happening in the body, we can move through the energy much faster. And then obviously, as we all know, energy just changes again and we swing back to the light again. Yeah, so important as a way not to get lost in that. Just one more. I thought it was an interesting point. If I put my hand on my chest while doing this kind of exercise, you can feel it more. Probably good for someone starting out, trying to tune into how they feel. So there's a little tip for somebody perhaps who tried that exercise earlier, couldn't quite get a grasp of what the heart chakra was doing. Yeah, just putting the hand on the center of the chest there might be a way to help cultivate that felt sense.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful tips. Thanks for watching, guys. Thank you, Kirsi. I shall wrap up here. I'll let you get on with your day. And as Kirsi said earlier, she's actually releasing a series of ebooks, I believe, at the moment on a different subject. So I don't know if you want to point people to a link in the comments, Kirsi, or perhaps people can reach out to you. What do you suggest?
Yeah, so so the website where you can find all my productions that are coming up, it's the a ebook about awareness, inner journey, how to start an inner journey, and then intuition, how to harness the power of intuition. You can find these probably in the next 2 weeks. I think I'll have them published on my website, presentinparenting.com. And I can also come and put a link in the comments when they're all out the oven. So I'm kind of doing them all at the same time for a purpose of just releasing that understanding and information.
Yeah. And you can probably tell by the website title that Kirsi specializes particularly in, in parenting and working with children as well, which is so important. I always say my daughter's like my greatest teacher.
Oh gosh, yes, they really, really are. And it's become more and more clear to me that it's parenting and reparenting. Like and the kids help us to reparent ourselves. So it
Exactly.
goes in that cycle. We parent them and they reparent us.
Yes, exactly. They really can be like our greatest teachers if we can see it. But